Equally inspirational is an organization called the Institute for Race Relations. It's been around for, well, almost 100 years. It is the think tank of all think tanks here in South Africa, and it was previously run by Frans Cronje, who's off doing his own thing now with consulting and the Social Research Foundation, and even a media company called The Common Sense. And when Frans left, there were some who thought, oh, there's going to be a big hole here. Well, that hasn't been the case. Dr. John Endres has stepped up. He has a different style, but equally impressive in the interactions that we've had. The staff members that are there are so committed, and what we get from the IRR on an ongoing basis is truly, it shows that this is a national treasure. Welcome. I just want to warn you beforehand. This anthem was John's choice, and it's a song I never heard before, and I'm not sure you have, but if you have, well, good luck. But let's welcome Dr. John Endres.
This BizNews production is brought to you by Brenthurst Wealth, the leader in offshore investing, connecting South Africa to opportunities worldwide. Invest better with Brenthurst.
Cool, thanks. Hello, everyone. It's great to be back here at the BizNews conference. Alec, thank you for inviting me. And that snippet was from a song called Army of Me by Björk. And I think that, we need a spirit of fighting in South Africa to fix the country, to get it right. And I've picked up a lot of themes from listening to the speeches the past 2 days, which I'll address also in my talk. So thank you all for being here and for giving me the opportunity to speak to you again. I'd like to start my talk today by quoting from a tweet which is likely edited. And I want to ask you if you think that this sounds familiar to you. We have shit water companies, so we buy bottled water. Shout out to Thirsty. We have rubbish police, so we hire private security. We have terrible healthcare, so we pay private hospitals instead. Our roads are littered with potholes nobody fills. The tax burden is heading for its highest sustained level since the 1940s. The service level is the worst in living memory. You are not overtaxed or underserved. You are actually both simultaneously. And the gap between the two is where your standard of living went. The state has become a subscription you cannot cancel and cannot use. And that sounds like South Africa, but it's actually a tweet about the UK, posted on the 7th of August by the user Rolling Hedge. The tweet was reposted over 4,000 times and got over 12,000 likes. So clearly that was striking a chord. And the reason I bring it up is because the last time Alec had me on his show, I just returned from the US and the UK, and I presented Alec with the daring thesis that I was more bullish on South Africa than the UK. And I elaborated on that theme in a piece I wrote for the Daily Friend, which is the IRR's opinion and news portal. The point I made in my piece is not that things are better in South Africa than in the UK, because we are far poorer, we have higher unemployment, higher crime, and an infrastructure base that is smaller and also getting worse faster than that of the UK. And yet, if I imagine a thought experiment where South Africa and the UK elect radical free market reformers to lead the country, so people whose agenda it is to take the gloves off, to create a pro-growth environment, boost investment, and get the economy growing, my money would be on South Africa rather than the UK. And this might strike you as odd, but consider, the UK is the patient who does not want to be cured. Britons have become very comfortable with trading their freedom for their safety. Taxes are high, but the state takes care of you. You can get arrested for posting unsavory opinions on social media, and many people do, but at least this protects you from being exposed to the unsavory opinions of others. Electricity and fuel may be expensive, but you are paying more to protect the planet from climate change. The supermarkets won't let you buy razor blades without staff authorization for fear that you might use them to attack someone. And that happened to me in June in London. Now imagine trying to introduce reforms in a society like that. I think that even the most determined reformer would hit a brick wall. People in the UK have become used to giving up their freedom for safety. Any reformer who tried to sell the message that if you want more growth, you need to vote for more freedom, which means accepting more risk, would quickly be shot down. And it's true, freedom is dangerous. It is risky. Things can go wrong. There will be some winners and some losers. And the more established you are in life, the more worried you will be about any threats to what you've got. According to the UN, the median age in the UK is 41 years. In France, it is 42 years. It is 47 years in Germany and 48 years in Italy. So no wonder people are risk averse in those places. But now think about us here in South Africa. Here the median age is just 29 years. Most people in their 20s don't have mortgages, pension funds, or significant savings even. What's more, our economy is stagnating and our economic freedom rating is mediocre and falling. So as South Africans, we have much less reason to protect the status quo and much more reason to change the current approach for something better. South Africa is the patient who does want to be cured. And that is something we've been hearing a lot about at this conference. So the talks by Jordan, Hill Lewis, by Duduzane, Zuma, and Prince Mashele all touched on it. Siziphiwe also touched on it in his fireside chat with Alec. Dissatisfaction with the ANC and frustration at the status quo is mixing with a desire to change things and a belief that our country is capable of so much more than it is currently delivering. I'd like to throw another thought into this mix. And some previous speakers have brought up the diaspora, South Africans who have left the country for greener pastures. By some estimates, around 1 million people have left South Africa in the last 25 years, and that trend is still continuing. Every single one of those people who left or is planning to leave represents a loss to South Africa. And how do we get them back? At the IRR, we've just conducted a diaspora survey on this very question. We asked overseas South Africans to complete a questionnaire. Over 1,000 participated, and here is some of what they told us. And note that this was not a representative survey, but its results line up with the findings of a diaspora survey conducted by the University of Cape Town's Liberty Institute earlier in the year. In our survey, the two main reasons given for leaving South Africa were economic opportunity, mentioned by 39.8, called it 40% of respondents, and safety concerns, mentioned by 30% of respondents. This was followed by 7% who were worried about race relations. When we asked participants what they thought about the state of SA, they were pessimistic. 81% had a negative overall impression of South Africa today, and 74% felt South Africa is moving in the wrong direction. Compared to a year ago, 59% felt more pessimistic about South Africa. And yet, 53% of these respondents were open or very open to moving back to South Africa in the next 10 to 15 years. So what is preventing them from doing so? The top concern about the state of South Africa was crime and safety at 38% and corruption at 32%. In third place, it was jobs and economic growth, mentioned by over a quarter of respondents. And this closely matches what we find in our surveys of South Africans in South Africa. The top 3 things respondents in the diaspora survey thought would have the biggest impact in improving South Africa were honest and cost-effective government, 40%, more opportunity regardless of issues like race, 25%, and faster economic growth and job creation, 21%. So what does this tell us? It tells us that across South Africans abroad and South Africans here in South Africa, there is a convergence. Answering the question of what will produce a better life for South Africans at the same time answers the question of what will bring South Africa's diaspora home. As Siziphiwe said, it's actually simple. You've got to do the basics right. Keep focused on the big picture without losing sight of the detail. So now, what are the prospects that we actually can get it right? I would argue that those prospects are better than you might think. And there are several reasons why I believe that. Let me start with some fundamentals. South Africa is a country with strong freedom of speech and a democracy that allows people to express their preferences by voting for one of a wide range of political parties, and most importantly, to vote a bad government out of power. Many other countries don't have that option. And this is not just important because it sounds nice. Democracy is feel good, everybody likes it. It's important because it is essential as a mechanism for managing differences, which exist in every society, and of course here in South Africa as well. And it is also important because it allows for course correction, something that is much more difficult in more authoritarian countries. If we get a course correction in South Africa, in which direction will it point? And again, our polling gives us some indications. For almost 2 decades, we've been asking South Africans what the top 2 priorities are that they want the government to address. And the first ranked item has been jobs for as long as we've been running this poll. Items 2 through 5 were all related to the rule of law and law enforcement. In order, they were illegal immigration, the abuse of women or children, corruption, and crime or safety and security. Those are followed by a slew of service delivery related issues like water, electricity, education, and housing. And only then at the very bottom of the list do you get to the more ideological issues that dominate the headlines: BEE, land reform, racism, inequality. It's not that those things don't matter, but they pale in importance in comparison to the ones at the top of the list. And what this means is that what South Africa's voters are looking for is perfectly normal and reasonable. The fact that they're not getting what they want is leading to frustration, and it is the main factor driving the decline of the ANC in survey after survey. And that brings me to the outlook on the local government elections. Here I rely on data recently gathered by the Social Research Foundation and the Common Sense. So Frans Cronje is behind both of these initiatives. And those organizations conducted a poll among over 2,000 registered voters last month in July. For ANC strategists, the most concerning finding is that support for their party has dropped below 50% in every core constituency. Among rural voters, it is 39%. Among black voters, 36%. Among township residents, 32%. And in established suburbs, so among middle and upper class voters of all races, ANC support is at 3%. So that's the big picture. It explains why ANC support was found at 34% nationally. And while results at the level of municipalities will vary, things are not looking good for the ANC in the metros where we do have numbers. In Johannesburg and eThekwini, the ANC is on 18%. In both places, it is outpolled by the DA, which is at 42% in Johannesburg and 23% in eThekwini. In Tshwane, the ANC is at 32%, with the DA 11 points ahead at 43%. So the shift that is happening here is a continuation of the 2021 local government election result. There, the ANC dropped below 50% for the first time, coming in at 46% nationally. Coalition governments proliferated across the country after those elections. There were 66 hung councils, and today over a third of South Africa's 257 municipalities are governed by coalitions. After this year's elections, that number will go up. The DA will be the largest party in more of those councils than it currently is, but governing those places won't be easy. Many coalitions have been unstable, and service delivery has suffered as a result, and I think the DA will find it challenging in many towns across South Africa in the next 5 years. But nonetheless, all of this reflects how politics is shifting, and to understand the direction, let me add a few more data points from our own 2026 polling. We asked people if the government should continue using apartheid-era race classifications to decide who should qualify for business and job opportunities. Here, 70% of respondents said the government should not continue to use race in this way. Among black respondents, 64% said this. We asked respondents which of the following 2 statements they agreed with. First statement, the government should focus more on social grants. Second statement, the government should focus more on job creation. 81% of all respondents and 81% of black respondents agreed with statement 2. The government should focus more on job creation. When we asked people if they were getting value for money for the taxes for the taxes we all pay, 61% said they were getting bad or very bad value for money. And not surprisingly, 56% thought the overall tax level should be cut, and 57% thought they personally should be taxed less. I think Dawie Ruat might have something to say about this tomorrow. And as an aside, which political party is campaigning on a tax-cutting platform? Can you think of any? Maybe that's something for us to discuss afterwards. There's one more finding I must share with you, and we wanted to know if it was true, as is often claimed, that South Africans will only ever support a black person to be president. As a practical example lurking in the background of this question, does the DA need to have a black leader if it wants to have a chance of leading the government? We thought we'd ask people. Here's the result we got in our survey. South Africans were almost exactly divided on the question. 47.4% agreed and 47.7% disagreed on what their fellow South Africans think. But then we asked a follow-up question, and this was asking people about whom they themselves would vote for, you specifically. The question was, think about the kind of person you would support to become the next president of South Africa. Which one of the following three options best describes your position? The options were, number one, I will only support a black person to be president. Number two, I would prefer to support a black person to be president, but I am open to other options. And number three, I will support the best person to be president, regardless of their race. Here was the result. 23% of respondents said they would only support a black person to be president, and 29% of black respondents agreed with that first statement. 11% would prefer a black person, but were open to other options, and it was 13% of black respondents here. And a whopping 66% of all our respondents said they would support the best person regardless of race, and that included 58% of black respondents. And with that, let me start wrapping it up. I know that many of you are optimistic about South Africa. We've heard that. But your optimism is mixed with uncertainty and anxiety. You want to know why you should be optimistic. And you're looking for reasons that go beyond the obvious, like our $2.5 trillion mineral endowment, our strategic location at one of the world's maritime choke points, our status as the only industrialized economy in sub-Saharan Africa, or the good weather. So why should you be optimistic? Not for the obvious reasons I gave you just now. Those have been true for decades and they haven't saved us. The real reason is much simpler. South Africans on the whole are sane. They want work, safety, honest government, and a fair shot, regardless of race. And our democracy is finally forcing politicians to listen. For 30 years it didn't. One party could take the same majority for granted and still win. But that is over. The ANC is below 50% and heading lower. Coalitions are spreading, and no party can build a majority anymore by ignoring what ordinary people want. South Africa is the patient that wants to be cured, and unlike Britain, it is young enough to survive the treatment. The medicine is growth. We think South Africa can grow at 7%, reached step by step over the next 5 to 7 years. At that rate, the economy doubles in a decade. A child starting school today would finish it in a country twice as rich. At the IRR, we've done the work on this. We have a Blueprint for Growth series of policy papers and also draft laws ready to use. The No More Race Laws Bill, the Value for Money Bill, the Growth and Employment in Mining Bill, the Right to Own Bill. The plans exist. What has been missing is the will to use them, and that is what is now starting to change. Your optimism is not naive. It is a bet on the good sense of your fellow South Africans. For the first time in 30 years, our politics is being forced to pay that good sense its due. And I invite you to help us make sure that it does. Thank you.
This BizNews production is brought to you by Brenthurst Wealth. Building wealth and protecting legacy since 2004. Invest better with Brenthurst. Start your day a step ahead. BizNews Insider. It delivers the business stories that matter every morning straight to your inbox, sharp, fast, and free. Subscribe now.